So what was it like driving from central Mexico to Ontario, Canada, solo? Let me think. I did a fair amount of planning, but one thing I can say is that, especially when it comes to safety in Mexico, areas that can be safe one day can be dangerous the next. And that was one of the problems that I ran into, is that trying to book accommodation for the entire trip, because heading into the busy season up here in the United States and Canada for summer holidays, I wanted to make sure that I could get accommodation camping and try to get camping in nicer areas. I found it difficult when I started to book. I started to look and research the route, months ago, and I waited until April, end of April, I think, to start booking. I think I had to wait until the end of April. I think it was April 29th. And so after that, I started to make my bookings. I was also concerned that I would run into like telecommunications problems with data, Wi-Fi, and not be able to make reservations while on the road. The same is found here in Canada in the high season. Campsites, good campsites, get booked up really quick, And so places that I had planned to camp at, I couldn't. I made the reservations where I could for the entire route, but I made all of my reservations, and then because the safety situation in different parts of Mexico can change overnight, like in a moment's notice, I waited until days before leaving to check if there's anything I should know about along the route. And sure enough, things had escalated in some parts near the border in Nuevo Leon. There were shootings in the city a week before, and the mayor, well, not just shootings, but like gunfighting, and the mayor issued stay-in-place orders, maybe it's called. So I knew, like even 6 months ago, that area was warm, if not hot. But yeah, having shootings happening a week before, it was hot. So then I was trying to figure out which way to go, and I ended up deciding to just avoid any isolated areas where I would be by myself, and just stick to the city and through one of the main bridges to cross the border. My thinking is that it's like swimming in the ocean, and you see people swimming together in a group in the ocean, thinking that they're safe from sharks or whatever. I don't know if you're any safer swimming together, and I don't know if you're any safer driving together when it comes to the usual like modus operandi of the cartel. You'll have 2 or 3 pickup trucks loaded with men with automatic rifles force you off the road, or even create a blockade and stop all traffic, demand things to let you pass. In worst case scenario, if they don't like the look of you or for whatever reason, or want to make a statement, then they don't let you pass. So that was a concern. And being alone, not that having someone with me at that time, but being alone, yeah, you just have more time to think, nothing to occupy your mind, so you're thinking about it. And at the same time is probably good because, having some training in this type of situation, I was able to stay aware and be constantly looking for my escape route. Trying to stay aware and looking for an escape route for 3 hours on a highway is fatiguing. There's no question. And that day was exhausting and made probably the next couple days equally tiring because I was already exhausted. Going back, I know I'm going to go a different route. It's going to take longer, probably 6 hours longer in driving, maybe 8. And that's a pain in the butt, but it's going to be safer. It should be. And yeah, I think next time I'll just avoid that area entirely, unless I know for certain that everything is good. But it seems like that area is always flaring up with problems. It's unfortunate, it's the most convenient route, but I guess I see a different part of northern Mexico when I drive through and just try to be a little bit more cautious. What would I say also? So in Mexico, I bought a little pass, electronic pass for the toll highways and preloaded it. It was one way to not have any extra cash on me. I would only have that card, well, device, and then I wouldn't have to worry about the toll highways along the way either. I'd just roll up and the sensor would read it and the gate would open and I would go through. So I did that to prepare, and I think that was good. Also in northern Mexico, one thing is there was a lot of transport truck traffic, and it was okay, it was manageable, but at times, surrounded, tiny car surrounded by big trucks traveling very fast or going through toll areas, and it's just transport, and me just kind of weaving through them. So, yeah, different situation. Driving through the US was okay. There were, I guess what I would say is one thing I found interesting is the speed limits are a lot faster. But I think that for the most part, people stick to the speed limits, maybe a little bit faster, but they're not driving as crazy. Like I saw a few people driving a little crazy, but not like in other parts. Not, I've only been here in Canada hours and I've already seen people driving way over the speed limit. And in Mexico, it's like the speed limit is, although it's the law, it's treated like it's suggested. So crossing the borders, I mentioned it in a couple videos that it always makes me nervous, even when flying. I don't know why, but it was easy, no problems. Asked a few questions, and obviously I'm not carrying anything that I'm not supposed to be. I'm, licensed, registered, and don't even have anything to declare, so no problem. It was interesting because I did see ICE deporting some Mexican nationals when crossing that border, and then at that border I did see a heavy search of a vehicle where they had the back seat pulled out and they had a dog and 3 or 4 border protection officers going through the car. So yeah, so things happen, right? Things go down, but yeah, I shouldn't be nervous because I'm not doing anything wrong, and I think that's the way that you should do, be responsible, and you can be okay. Fatigue, it's a long drive, so I limited the drive. You plan on Google Maps or whatever maps, and you always get a time, and it would be like 5 hours of driving, but in the end of the day it's 7 or even 8 because you slow down with road work, or you stop for gas and to eat and bathroom break, or all these things that slow you down. So there were a few days where I was driving and I caught myself not dozing off, but like thinking, whoa, pay attention, like where were you right then? And that's not cool. So yeah, I would stop and The problem is you're on a highway, so you have this moment and you're fatigued, and okay, now's the time to find somewhere to stop and walk around, get a drink, whatever, and just wake yourself up. Do something different for a little while because your attention is no longer on the road. Problem is that sometimes you're on the highway somewhere and there's nowhere to really pull over, so you need to drive another 20 kilometers or something. Fortunately, it's not that far. Usually it's not 100 kilometers, but still, there were those moments where I would more or less wake up and need to drive further and really have to focus on. And they, like I said, they weren't long days, but yeah, it's just a fatigue of being alone, I think, being solo and just driving and, change the music a lot and do what you can. Yeah, I think another thing I did, I don't know if it's advice I would give, but something I did was I never let my fuel go down below a quarter. Like, really, whenever my fuel got to a third of a tank, that's when I decided, okay, next gas station I'll stop and I'll get gas. If I was in an incredibly busy area with traffic, I might put it off a little bit. Never let it go below a quarter of a tank. And the reason is I didn't want to get stuck in some of these spots where you're driving and there is no fuel to fill up, and or get lost or something, and run into that kind of problem. So I always tried to, I would watch, and at about a third of a tank is when I'd fill up. I would also try to fill up at night, like not at night, but when I saw that I was, like 50 kilometers from my destination, I would look for gas and I would top up the tank to whatever. That way in the morning, I wouldn't have to stop. I could just get up and start driving and drive for, a couple hours before needing to even think about pulling over. And the reason was the same thing. I did leave relatively early every day, but the reasoning was the same, just about traffic and not knowing what morning traffic would be like with people driving, going to work or whatnot. And yeah, I just wanted to not be in a lineup at a gas station. So another thing that for me had to do with safety was I didn't really tell people where I was going. So people noticed that I was driving a Canadian car everywhere in Mexico and the United States. And they would mention, of course, whatever, like you're a long way from home or that type of thing. And I would tell them that I was heading back to Canada, but I never told them that I was camping somewhere specific, or I would never ask for directions to a specific place. There was one time I asked somebody, and it was a manager of a campsite. So the reason is because although I think a lot of people are good in the world, at the same time, I just didn't want to get robbed along the way. And so that just made sure that, people didn't know where I was heading to sleep that night. A car full of stuff. How would I describe the drive? It was long. That's what I'd say. It was long. It was tiring. It was interesting to see the landscape change from arid desert mountains into, these forests of Canada, and the United States. Animals along the way, armadillos. I only saw dead ones on the road, but armadillos, and saw lots of deer, lots of different birds. One thing I would do differently is that, aside from planning the route, I wish that I had more time in some places. Just that, to have some more time to rest possibly. Problem with me is I can't sit still for very long, but have somewhere to rest, but also some of these places were beautiful, and maybe to see if I could get a canoe rental, or if there was some hiking trail to go on or something like that, and just see it a little bit more. But I'm lucky to have seen it. Yeah, anyway, if you have any questions about the drive, leave a comment and I'll try to answer it. Thanks for watching.